I want to talk in this first segment about America's identity. You all know, likely, that this coming Saturday is July 4th, Independence Day. It is a holiday in America, and a holiday usually celebrated by parades and fireworks and all sorts of great things. But I want to talk about July 4th. Really, this whole week, I want to try to tie some of the issues we talk about to the founding promise of America and to the idea of freedom. America came along in 1776. We had the Declaration of Independence. We actually celebrate the signing of the Declaration, kind of a cool thing in itself. We don't celebrate the last day of the Revolutionary War. We don't have a big holiday over the British surrender. We don't even have a big holiday over the Constitution being finally ratified, although we do have Constitution Day. What we celebrate as a national holiday is July 4th, the signing of the Declaration of Independence, which essentially was the founders of our country committing to the idea that we are making a new deal in America, a new deal for people in this world. The concept that, as recited in the Declaration of Independence, all men and women created equal, that were endowed by our Creator, means given to us by God certain rights, and those include life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. The war was fought, the eventual Constitution, after some, stumbles along the way, we came up with our Constitution, and the entire purpose of the Constitution was to try to give a structure to protect those promises of liberty that the founders gave us, in addition to the recitation in the Declaration of Independence about our just inherent God-given, because you were born right, to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. The Constitution embellished more about what that means, more of the promise to Americans of that era and all the way up until today were included. So what the founders did, in addition to the Constitution's structure of government, it also included the Bill of Rights, the idea that all these promises, these rights we have simply because we were born, were spelled out more and more in the Bill of Rights of the Constitution. So this coming Saturday, we are celebrating July 4th. Among the most important things in the founding of America was this concept of the existence of the right to freedom because you live. And in fact, the way the founders wrote about the promises in the Declaration, it wasn't just saying, hey, we're going to make a bunch of new rights for people in this country. We're going to make our country super special because we want people to have more rights than other people have. It was a deeper thought, an inherent recognition that these rights they spelled out, the rights that they put into words, were really rights granted to us by God, by our Creator, in the language of the Declaration, by our Creator, and that those rights had always existed because God given to everyone on the planet up until the time America was created and forevermore. The concept wasn't just, let's make a special list of rights for these people. Let's agree you have these rights because you live on the earth, because you are God's child. And the concepts that, as they embellished and spelled out the promise of freedom, the founders, made reference frequently to concepts found in the Judeo-Christian scriptures. The idea that the rights came to us because of the way God, the kind of God, the God that's described in the scriptures, in the Bible. That's what the founding was all about. We sit in the year 2020, and we have an election in November of this year. And in that election, truly what's on the ballot, I'll get into this in the next segment, but truly what's on the ballot is the question, are we going to hold on to that precious, unique, extraordinary promise our founders gave us of the idea of the founding of our country based on the idea of human liberty, the freedom of the individual to live his or her life and pursue their version of life, liberty, and happiness? Or are we going to fall over the cliff to what the American left, or as a good friend always reminds me to say, the anti-American left, is trying to push on America in 2020? Whatever you think about the personality of President Trump or of Joe Biden or of any leader of either party, the personalities of the leaders, the personalities of the candidates are not on the ballot. The ballot is about, are you going to have the America, the promise of freedom, or are you going to have chaos, ruin, and destruction coming from the radical, tyrannical, totalitarian left in America who is trying to gain control again, not just of the White House, but they want to retain control of the House, they want to get control of the Senate. And the left in this country It's not the Democrat Party of your grandmother's days. The left in this country is completely owned by the Marxist totalitarian ideology that only a few of them are honest enough to articulate. But that's who owns the left's policy. That will be what happens if you have a victory for the Democrats in November. I want to talk about three quick things that were kind of interesting that came in the reading, thinking about for today. One is, you've heard me mention many times, Ayaan Hirsi Ali, and she's a just brilliant American. She is an American citizen now. She grew up in Ethiopia. She grew up in a Muslim country. She was deeply, deeply harmed by the attitudes of Islam, the genital mutilation they do to girls, the repression of the right of women, the just horrific, limiting, comes with the idea of Islam itself, ideas that she grew up in Ethiopia. You may know her life, long story, but she got to America and she wrote pieces in the Wall Street Journal, and she called it "America Doesn't Need a New Revolution." I urge you to read it. You can find it on our website, americacanbetalked.org, on the homepage, under shows, drop down list of links, it's there. But the reason I want to mention that is this. We have so many people in this country who grew up in this era where they did not have they did not have to go fight wars. They watched a minor portion of America, small percentage of American military handling the strife we've had in the Middle East. But for the most part, the millennials and even older generations grew up relatively freely, grew up in a country where we had relative peace, relative freedom, and they became obsessed with every little hint of something that seemed somewhat, in some way, unfair. And they became, because of the way the left has taken over the institutions of our learning, K through 12, the college, the grad schools, they became disenchanted and disaffected from the idea of America. This is what has happened in this country, and it's why so many Americans today cannot fathom this wholesome love of America that some people still hold. The America they were taught in the schooling they went through, the America that the life they lived was free of burden, free of challenges, free of troubles, and so they could burrow in on some perceived inequality or unfairness and make it and blow that up, and so that they equated it with some fundamental wrong in the ideas in the founding of America. So Ayaan Hirsi Ali's piece, brilliant piece, basically saying, look, if you came here from any other country, you would know how wonderful this country is. She is African. I mean, she's actually of African descent. She is a genuine African American. She came to this country having lived in several other places, including in a Islamic refugee camp, an Ethiopian refugee camp in Kenya, moved another time, finally came to America, and she's just saying, look, we don't need another revolution in this country. We have great ideas that found this country. We don't have a perfect country. We can always try to improve it. But she's recognizing what the left is doing with their attempt to defund the police, overthrow our sense of law, free people from jails, all the craziness, burn down buildings, burn cars, steal things. She sees the danger, what the left is headed to, and she's saying, wait a minute here. America's not perfect. We don't need another revolution. We need, as Americans, to start to use the term, recognize that what the left is doing, it's too kind to call it a revolution, because a revolution can imply something good, like the American Revolution, where we overthrew the repression of King George and the taxation without representation, all the other things, and created our new country. What the left is doing, they may call it revolution, it's actually an overthrow and a reinstatement of tyrannical, totalitarian government. That is what the left is trying to bring to America. Got to urge you to read her piece and think about that, because where we really are in this country, and I'm going to be on this theme for a while, folks, over this time that we're in this country, with just dramatic challenges to America's future and to our culture, our freedom, our very existence as a sovereign free nation. We're in, you can find many terms for it, we're in a peaceful civil war. We're in a culture war. We're in a battle for the identity of America. That is the level of the fight we are in for this country. It is a battle for the very existence, the continued freedom of this country. As we watch the riots unfolding in the streets and the looting and the property, you still have Chaz or CHOP, whatever they want to be called this week, staking out their ground in Seattle. They're not moving anywhere. They're staying. Other places are trying to set that up. You have a revolutionary, and that's, I don't like to imply that what they're doing is anything noble like the Revolutionary War was. It is a complete destruction of the idea of America, and is assertion, a demand that they are taking over and the America as founded is out. So I want to just tell you, we're in this culture war, and I'm going to wrap up the first 5 by making 2 points. One is President Trump is among the very few who's trying to ring the alarm bell, to raise the alarm bell, to say, we Republicans need to have a tougher response to the political war we are in. He is right. There was a great interview. He did a recent interview in the Oval Office this past Friday, and with the Federalist, Ben Domenech from the Federalist, had a long interview with Trump in the office. Part of what Trump is saying, and Domenech is reporting, is we're in a political war, and the Republican Party doesn't act like it. We don't recognize, or at least if they recognize, they don't speak up. Elected officials in Washington on the Republican side need to be coming to the aid of America. They'd be coming to the aid of the idea of the rule of law, coming to the aid of the idea we're not going to abandon police. We're not going to abandon the structure of law we have in this country. We're not going to abandon America as founded just because the left has managed through decades of just tyrannical manipulation of the education system and of the children in America, young adults in America. Just because the left has succeeded in inspiring them to hate America, to view America as a bad place, we can't be surrendering America. Trump was really good on that. I'll tell you a couple quick things about this culture war before I wrap up the first 5. One is, all these, it can seem like we're overwhelmed with violence, what we're watching in the cities around the country, including my city, Dallas, but all over the country. But there was a Pew study that showed only 6% of U.S. adults participated in a rally or a protest, so that's fewer than 20 million people. And another great piece was written, I think it's in the Federalist, the Federalist, calling this a cultural civil war. We patriots, we people on the conservative side of the aisle, we need to recognize the war we're already in. The left has been at war with the fundamental promise of American freedom for decades. The Communist Party in this country has been at war with the idea of America for decades. The American left, the Democrat Party, has bought in to the radical left. They are at war with the idea of America, and we need to be at war ourselves. We need to understand this, what we are engaged in, is it's a war for the survival of the idea of America as founded. So we've had, as this one particular great article is pointing out, not just the New York Times 1619 Hate America Project, which we talked about recently, but also the Black Lives Matter agenda, now being taught in public schools. The radical end capitalism, must have reparations, let people out of prison no matter how violent they are. All of the agenda items that they put forward are being taught in the public schools. But you have to understand another thing, and I'm going to pound on this over and over today. This is not a race war. We are not in a race war. It is not black versus white. It's elite, leftist, radical, white Americans leading the Communist Party, leading the socialist movement, who are manipulating people who don't even understand what they're fighting for. So you have the radical, mostly white, elite liberals leading this attack on America. And they happen at this moment to have completely manipulated a portion of the black population to join in this Black Lives Matter madness in our schools and cities around this country. And then you have the idea of America backed by many people of all backgrounds. There are black conservatives who think Black Lives Matter is just as crazy as everyone should think. The Black Lives Matter Inc. movement is uprooting of America, destroying America. So it's not a race war. It is the forces who love America, trying to preserve America and the founding promise of freedom for every generation, and the anti-American radical left, run and manipulated mostly by white leftists, white extremist progressive leftists. So they may have 20 million people at rallies if you tally up all the Black Lives Matter, but it's being orchestrated and manipulated by a small group of white radical leftists in this country. They've been very successful, though, in pitching this as a race war, a race battle. You see all sorts of people talking about it. We're headed to a race war. We must reject this. We are not. We are not in a race war. We're in a war for retain America, preserve America, always work to improve it, always work to improve the public education system and the policing system, whatever else has to happen. But hold on to those ideas of America. That's the American side, that's the Trump side, and then there's the other side, which is trying to destroy America and using the Black Lives Matter agitators to get their way. I also want to point out you have virtually no, in fact, not only are the Democrats in the Congress supporting, and not only are they not complaining or criticizing or calling out attention to the destruction of property, they've actually come out and said that they're going to really stay out of this statute stuff. I mean, who knows what's right or wrong? You can't get a person with a D by their name to do anything to stand up for law and order. So it is time in our country to be optimistic, to be eyes wide open, to recognize the left, what they are doing to this country is the destruction of America. They are on track. They have motivated now millions of Americans to get in these marches, and other Americans afraid of being called racist if they even question any of the premises of the Black Lives Matter movement, if they even question Antifa, if they even question the socialist agenda, they're called racist, and too many people without enough backbone are standing down. And you, my very fine friends, need to be among the warriors on the right standing up for the idea of America. And that, my very fine friends, is today's First Five.